Well, Bailey, thank you so much for helping with my project. Can you say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Bailey Burns. I'm an aerospace systems engineer. Let's see, I'm also a grad student, so I'm getting my master's in space resources right now. Just finished up finals, so that was good. I work at a company called Paragon Space, and we focus on the ECLSS, or the life support system, for extreme environments, including space.
Oh, that's great. I actually had a chance to talk to Grant as
hmm
well.
Yeah,
Um,
great CEO. Yeah, you got the best there.
yeah, it's so important to kind of get out there and do outreach and kind of help to connect it to what everybody else is doing in the mainstream.
Exactly.
So the Space Resources program you're doing, where's that at?
It's actually part of Colorado School of Mines. It's a very new program. I want to say under 5 years, somewhere in the 3 to 5 year range. And so it started at Mines specifically because Mines is very good for resources, environment, and that kind of stuff. And now they're like, okay, I guess we should take this to space. We should start seeing how we can use our skill set in space.
Well, actually, one of our members of the North Houston Space Society is going to the Colorado School of Mines.
Oh, really?
Hunter,
Yep, I know
Min-
Hunter. I've had a few classes with him. He's pretty cool.
and he was actually just texting me today about somebody else that's in the class, Britt Atkins.
She's another really cool one. We both like lava tubes.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, apparently she's starting this Celestial Citizen website with a similar type of thing as this program. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Oh, cool. I'll have to reach out to her about that too then, because she's got it going on. She's got a lot going on, and it's cool.
So what got you into aerospace?
Let's see. I don't know. Actually, that's a really good question. Everyone I feel like has all these like great origin stories and stuff like that. Like they watch this movie. I don't really have that. I kind of, in high school was like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I had to go through that whole, existential crisis, I guess. And I really thought I was going to be like a journalist or something. But I ended up getting into School of Mines, which is a really good engineering school. So I was like, I guess I'll see where this engineering thing goes. I don't know. And because I didn't really come in with any preconceived notions or anything, I just kept following what excited me, and that was space. So I went from not really knowing to I had an aerospace internship to just down, and then as I kept going every year I seemed to get more and more steam, headed towards space. So
Well, that's interesting. I always loved space growing up, but whenever I
Mhm.
graduated from high school in '94, the big thing was the internet. And anybody who knew anything about
Ah,
computers kind of got sucked into that. And then
yeah, dot-com boom, yeah.
exactly. So if you weren't doing aerospace, is journalism likely the thing that you'd be doing, or you think you'd be doing
I
something
don't
else?
know, man. I've never thought of that before. I guess I probably would still like to do engineering of some sort because I very much enjoy, um, the how does this work, and feeling like I'm playing into something bigger. But I bet you I would be doing a lot more of like the outreach for like nonprofits and stuff. I do that now with space, but I'd probably be doing it on like a more typical scale, not so much the space stuff, but more of like, I don't know, like the Habitat for Humanity stuff. I don't know. I like that kind of stuff, but since I got drawn into space, most of my nonprofits have to do with space now.
Well, and we will need some habitat for humanity in space if we're going to
Exactly. There we
colonize.
go. I'll head that up.
Um, well, when did you find out that we're going back to the moon in 2024?
Oh man, when was that? I want to say it was probably in college. Was when they first started. My internship was at an aerospace company, so I knew they were working on Orion. I got to work on Orion a little bit, and so I knew that we had like plans to go back to the moon. And then when it was officially announced, 2024, this is the deadline. That was really exciting for me because it made me realize like, oh, we got to get it together. Like if we're going to do this, we need to go. We need to do this now. So I think that was really exciting. I remember that being like, oh wow, there's a real possibility for this to be happening, not just in my lifetime, but like real soon. Like
Yeah, I know all these great plans that happen 30, 40 years from now. It's like they might as well not happen at all,
Yep,
It's
yep.
like, um, and would it surprise you that most of the non-space people I talk to don't know we're going back to the moon?
I don't find that surprising at all. Most of the non-space nerds, that's what I call it. A lot of the space nerds that, they're not space nerds. They actually tell me that they didn't realize that NASA existed after the Apollo landing. And I was like, it's been
Wow.
here for 40 years doing like amazing things. And like, Skylab, the shuttle program, the ISS, like we've had continuous human presence in space for the last 20 years. And people think that NASA just evaporated after the Apollo landing. Yeah, so it makes me realize that the average, like the people that don't really pay attention to this kind of stuff, they have no idea what's going on. And it's so scary because this is our future, you know what I mean? It's like, but it's happening right now.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? I mean, what do you think changed after Apollo?
Well, I think for one, Apollo was a big deal, not just for NASA, but everyone talks about all over the world. The entire world went silent to watch that happen, and I don't think even now when we go back to the moon, that's necessarily going to happen. I think there's a lot of other stuff going on to distract people. So I think that was the first thing, is that it was just such a big deal that the smaller stuff might seem like less of a big deal. I don't know entirely. But yeah, so I think that was just like, trying to compare everything, that was a big moment. And then after that, I think in general, I don't know, space is hard, I guess. So people just kind of gravitate away from the hard stuff. You know what I mean? Especially when there was like deaths and stuff like that, people started really freaking out about space in general. And I think that's when people kind of stop paying attention. They pay attention to deaths and then it goes away again. And I think the publicity for it has been very, very like specific. You know what I mean? Like it's very, this is what we're going to put out to the public. And I think a lot of that is, it's really good, but it's also like people don't get the chance to ask those questions and explore and kind of figure that out. So, and the other thing is just the advancements weren't as quick as they were right now. Like you said, you had the internet coming out, and so people were more obsessed with the internet than they were space and that kind of stuff. So I think, we've done a lot of the other technologies, so now it's time for space to take a rise again.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, I feel like that the 2020s might be as transformational for space as the 1990s were for the internet.
Oh,
But
that's a good comparison. I like that. Yeah.
yeah, but I was like kind of deconstructing that the other day. One thing that I think made the 1990s kind of blow up for the internet was, everybody can participate in it. I mean, you could go buy a computer, hook it up to the network. You could start, you have a BBS, which were these computers hooked up to modems that people used to dial it
Mm-hmm.
into. I don't know if you familiar
Yeah.
with that. Okay, because my children would have,
I
I
had
would
no
have to
idea.
explain it to them. Yeah. But you can have that, hook it up to an ISDN line, and suddenly you're now an internet service provider, and you've expanded the network and stuff like that. And with like the small sats and with like these abilities to send experiments up to International Space Station, like through NanoRacks and Dream Up and other things. And I got a DHL moon box, which, by the way, this interview is going on a little micro SD card that I'm sending to the moon next year.
No way.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
made it.
Absolutely. So I'm kind of concerned about the radiation, but I think people of the future will have this amazing reconstructive technology.
And they'll figure it out. I like
Be
that.
able to figure it out. Yeah. Either that or they're going to be very confused about what's on the SD card. Or it could be like me trying to find a DVD player. They're like, what does
I
this
think
go
I
in?
know what this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's really true. Like the accessibility is like on an all-time high, I guess, in terms of, you still can't have your everyday guy be able to do space things, but smaller companies can get involved with the lower launch costs, with the, like you're saying, the small sats, that kind of stuff. We can start really seeing smaller private companies come in, which I think you're right is going to really drive it forward.
And I think the big transformation is going to be whenever we get like space mining and space manufacturing.
Yeah, that's my master's. That's exactly what I'm looking at, and that's why I'm doing it. It's because like once we get to that point, it's going to be like kind of like the the Industrial Revolution. It's going to be like the space industrial revolution. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, the moment you can like transmit plans for something to be built on the moon, and it's like actually built on the moon, I mean, like the cost becomes just
so much lower. Like millions of dollars lower. Like,
Yeah, it's just whatever time it takes to transmit, and then the time of using whatever facilities you need up there, because it's just like, wow. I think that'd be
yeah,
like the transformational technology.
I agree.
So tell me your plans on how to make it happen.
Oh boy. Yeah, I guess that's a really good question. So like I said, that's pretty much exactly my master's. The head of our program, he actually has a really good TED talk on basically like using the land in space, exactly that. And we're really focused on creating a sustainable human presence, if that makes sense, and using what we have in space to stay in space longer. So like you said, you don't have to launch all that stuff to the moon. We don't have to launch water from Earth. That would literally be taking water away from Earth to go to space. So we're planning on using the water that is in space, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing is, I don't know, almost being like cunning with how you use space resources. Like you really have to figure out the most efficient way to do things. And that's a huge part of space in general is efficiency. And a lot of the times, weirdly enough, is to mitigate risk and to have high efficiency is oftentimes the simple answer. You know what I mean? It's either the most extreme, very technical answer, or it's a very simple, people have been doing this for thousands of years and it works in space too. So I think, kind of finding the balance between those is going to be the best way to get us into space.
Is there a particular example of that you think is worth calling out?
Honestly, I just think about like what they're doing like on the ISS and stuff. And a lot of what you're seeing is all this really advanced technology and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there's still just kind of a lot of it is very kind of like life on Earth a little bit, like the water, the bathing, it looks a little different, but it's very similar to, like it's all the same, if that makes sense. It's just you have to be more careful in space.
Yeah, a lot more careful. A
Yeah.
little bitty.
Yeah.
Oh, I left the water running. Might be inconvenience
Whoops.
or
Yeah. And I guess that's what it is it's like, it's very unique solutions to the same problems. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean. It's all the same. Obviously, we got some other crazy stuff like solar radiation and, crazy things that we don't necessarily have to deal with on Earth. But a lot of the day-to-day kind of human factor stuff is just unique ways of figuring out how to deal with the same problems.
Yeah, I was just thinking, close the door, you're letting the AC out. But like, close the airlock.
I like that. Close the airlock.
Yeah. Well, what reasons for going back to the moon make the most sense to you?
I mean, the one that I'm really pushing for is the idea of how many resources are on the lunar surface. Like I said, it's the same issues that you have here on Earth. Energy, fuel, that kind of stuff. We have that issue here on Earth. We just also have it in space. And I think the moon is a really good way to work on those issues. Specifically, a lot of the talk is to use the moon as kind of like a gas station, to Mars, where we only need a rocket to get us to the moon, basically. We've done that before, obviously. So we just need to do that. And then from the moon, we can create what we need to go to Mars. So you're not doing this giant, semi-truck rocket with everything to take us to Mars. You can actually do it in pieces and make it a little bit more faster and more achievable and that kind of stuff, which I really like. And, the resources on the moon, there's water, which we use as rocket fuel, which I'm sure you've talked about. So having that quite literally as a gas station is really exciting. And then all the other material, there's tons of metals, which, as you're talking about making stuff on the moon, totally feasible in the future. And then the one that always gets me is helium-3. People don't seem to know a whole lot about it, but helium-3 is just a crazy resource, which not only, there's some crazy stats out there, I don't remember them exactly, but the amount of helium-3 on the moon could easily sustain human growth for thousands of years. Like, not just human presence on Earth, but like the growth that we expect to see for thousands of years from an energy consumption level, which, I mean, that kind of thing, that's probably one of the things that excites me most about the moon is not only does it help us get to Mars, but it can also help us build a better world here on Earth. So it's like, looking at both sides of it, it's just a great way to help progress humanity in a healthier, cleaner way.
Well, the helium-3, is it true that all of the benefits of that are kind of theoretical at this point, that we haven't quite created a a reactor yet that's able to use helium-3, or
I
has there?
guess, yeah, that's probably true. That there's no like, there's not a helium-3 plant somewhere on, Antarctica or something like that. We don't have that developed yet. So yeah, that will take a lot of work once we get there. But I think one of the things that excites me most about the future of space travel is, in order to do these things, we're probably going to have to start using nuclear power. And a lot of people, obviously, from humanity's history, have a lot of doubts and fear around nuclear power, which it's completely valid, but I'm hoping kind of this push, and with helium-3 and that kind of stuff, we'll start figuring out ways to make it safer, more efficient, all the kind of ease these fears of the general public. And once again, that definitely, using nuclear power here on Earth and then also in space would probably, eliminate a lot of the bad energy that we're seeing now, and really help our future too.
Yeah, I mean, talking about nuclear energy, we have a gigantic nuclear reactor in the middle of our solar system, which we only capture so little of its energy.
Yeah, we should be using that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I heard numbers like, if you imagine a sphere that went out to the orbit of the Earth,
Mhm.
and you consider the surface area of that sphere compared to the surface area of the Earth, then that represents how much of the energy is actually falling on Earth versus going out into space in other
Oh
directions.
my gosh.
And and that number, I believe, is like 1/700th billionth of the sun's energy falls on the Earth. It's just like,
Tiny. It's so small.
and that powers everything, every living thing,
Hmm.
ultimately every light bulb, right? Because even
Yeah,
fossil
by
fuels
some,
are.
yeah. That's
So,
so true. Like, if we can use that fraction to create civilization, like, imagine what we could do if we really figured out that star.
oh, I know, it uh, would be unlimited what we could do.
Hmm. Hmm.
People are talking about using like reflecting mirrors to like heat up asteroids and break them apart and refine them. I mean, you could do that with the moon, actually.
Yeah,
That's kind
yeah,
of
you totally
scary.
could. Hmm.
I
Yeah,
don't know
that's
if I like that,
one
but
really cool company doing that. Oh, I can't remember
I
their
think it's like
name. Trans
Tran-
Astra. Yeah.
Transastra.
Yeah, and they got I love it. Their design is like, they call it the honeybee or the queen bee or something like that, because it looks like a bee kind of. It's yellow. I love that design. I think it's so cool. It's such a unique way to mine asteroids.
Well, I think the space-based power is something that a lot of people could relate to as being beneficial. But just setting that aside for a little bit, you have essentially, you could take people and break them into two groups. You have those, I think it's a natural progression of humanity to go out into space, in which case going to the moon makes complete sense, right? I mean, but then you have a large part of the population who thinks that the Earth is everything, the
Yeah.
end of it all. Why go beyond that? Everything else is just fiction. We have our problems down here. Are there reasons besides the power one? I think that's pretty convincing, that those people should support kind of us returning back to the moon and what we're doing in space. I mean, like, how would you relate it to this group of people who's like, the natural progression of humanity is to stay on the Earth. Anything beyond that's just folly. There's definitely people that think along those lines.
Yeah, and that's something that I oftentimes come across. I do a lot of science communication and space talk, and I get everyone excited for space. And that is probably the most common thing that I'm hit with people that don't necessarily believe, what I believe. And you kind of, you're handicapping me here, because that's my go-to is the power. So if I can't say that, let's see.
Because I mean, the
I
power
guess
is good. I mean, I
it's
think
like the
that's
best.
enough. I
It's a
think
good
that's enough. But
one.
I'm fishing for more
Yeah.
things to use in these.
What's the reason? Yeah, I guess, I mean, like you said, it's literally two trains of thought. So it's hard to break it down to the point where you're literally fundamentally changing how someone else thinks. But I am very much the person that believes um, humans are very natural. I know we have this like man-made conception and everything like that, but I also do very much think that, like, humans, we are a type of animal. We are an organism, and we have evolved to where we are now. And I think the reason for that is like, I mean, just what you said, like, this is kind of what happens with animals in general, species, is that's what they do. They grow, they learn, they adapt, and then they grow further. And so I think that's kind of what this is we've pretty much figured out how to adapt to the earth. You know what I mean? That's the crowning achievement of humanity, is that, of our species, is that we can adapt so quickly, and we can overcome the challenges in a very, cunning, unique way. And that's exactly what we're doing in space too. So to me, I don't know why there is such a boundary between Earth and the rest of everything out there, because when you think about it, back in the day, um, being, let's say, on the main continent with like Asia, Africa, Europe, we kind of explored all that, and it was time for us to go to the next stage, which was the Americas, Australia, and Antarctica. So to me, it's just very similar. It's just a different, instead of going over the sea, we're just crossing the thin blue line. You know what I mean? So I guess to me, I've never seen it as that was the boundary. I've never seen it as like the Earth is all that there is, and I've never, I can't, I can't think that way. I guess I've always seen it as that's just the next step. So for the people that believe, the other thing with that specifically is that humans have destroyed Earth, you know what I mean, and we don't want to destroy space, and I very much understand that argument, and that's actually one of the reasons I am so invested in my career and making sure that I am part of that future, because I know that I will be someone that thinks about the environment, and that we'll put an emphasis on that. And so I know if I'm there and I'm finding other people who will do that, I'm hoping that we will not run into the same issues that we had here on Earth. So it's one of those that's, yeah, it's just like, why bound yourself? Like, why think that it's only Earth if it's just a physics problem to get to space? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that 100% makes sense. The other kind of thing you run against is who gets to participate in that future, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
I was but originally I was planning to do these interviews with people in coffee shops and the mall and stuff, and I did that
COVID.
between COVID, yes. But last February I was in Edinburgh, and I was at the Edinburgh, the Scottish Museum, and I interviewed a couple there, and we just happened to do it right in front of the Apollo model, which I thought was like so perfect. But that was,
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah, I know. But they're like, what's the point if only billionaires and the rich people and the elite get to participate, or people from just like Western countries and things like that? I was wondering what you thought about that. I, I mean, how do you get somebody in, say, Kenya, or in Pakistan, or in Vietnam, feeling like they're a part of this, or is that even possible at this point? Maybe there's a whole bunch of economic and social development and global development we need before that point, but
Yeah, that's a good question. And I am one for spaces for all, spaces for everyone. I very much believe that. A lot of the science communication that I do is specifically with underdeveloped nations or starting, budding space nations and stuff like that. And I think it is really important to make sure that everyone is part of this conversation. I mean, let's go back to your internet example. There's people in the world without internet. So obviously we're not doing a good job with any of this. Like any technology that we create, there is a gap. And well, like I said, humans are born to adapt. That's what made us where we are now. So I think we recognize that there's this problem. We recognize that there's this gap, and now we need to start adapting to it and making sure that, once again, as long as we are putting an emphasis on that, and making sure that everyone who is in power is involved in also giving that to other people. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those, you have to be a good person. You know what I mean? You have to have that empathy to want that for people. So it is difficult. Like you said, there's tons of socioeconomic issues right now, especially like the countries you listed, that it's just difficult to get involved. You know what I mean? So I think the best thing we can do is make sure that you get people thinking, you know what I mean? And knowing that that is an option. Because I think, people who, especially in the space industry, but most anything that's notable, if people want it, they will go find it. Like through any of the opportunities, any of the struggles, they'll figure it out. They just have to know that that's an option. You know what I mean? So hopefully that's the goal. That's why I do all my science communication, is specifically to reach out to the kids so they know that this is an option for their future, which I didn't. Like I said, I didn't even know like I could be an engineer when I grew up. So making sure that door is open for people, I think, is the most crucial. And then I do very much like all of the both commercial and government entities making an emphasis on bringing in different countries, and you're really seeing each country's kind of finding their own little thing that they're good at. And so as we're going forward with that, I'm hoping our smaller countries, our more underdeveloped countries, can start picking out what they want to specialize in space, so that when it's time, they are ready to jump in and know exactly what they need to do to kind of help that team, team world.
yeah, and I mean, there's so many technologies that help us here that we need for space, like being able
Hmm.
to have like closed loop recycling for
That's
everything,
huge. Yeah.
water, food, physical materials. I think people recycle a lot more if they can put like the plastic into a thing and actually see some other thing pop out of it.
And watch it like here to
Yeah.
here. I agree. Yeah.
Like you put that in people's home and suddenly,
Everyone's
people
doing
are
it.
like, hey, do you need that plastic bottle? I'll take it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm actually seeing it.
Um, one of the reasons that gets talked about a lot, or one of the accomplishments about a return to the moon that gets talked about a lot, is putting the first woman on the moon, which I
Mhm.
think is a great kind of social thing to do. But also, people's like minds when it comes to space are very narrow, and they're not deeply looking into it. So, by putting out there, in 2024 we're going to land the first woman and the next man, a lot of people walk away thinking that's all there is to it. And
Mhm.
I was wondering how real you felt that risk was, and like if you had the ability to change the messaging, what would you change about it?
That's huge. Yeah. And I will have to say, like, that is one of the most exciting things that I think came out of this Artemis platform. Like I said, like the media push for this has been great to make sure, women are part of that equation. And specifically, they just announced, the Artemis astronauts, and to see so many of them, not just women, where, it's a female majority crew, or I guess not crew, but class. And but it's also a very diverse class. There's all sorts of different ethnicities involved. And so I think, at the very least, I think NASA is taking this very seriously, which, like I said, once you get kind of the leaders taking things seriously, the rest follow that leadership. That's kind of how it goes. So I'm really excited to see that NASA is making a push for this diversity and for the women. Like you said, I am also afraid that everyone's like, okay, it's just like Apollo. We land the woman on the moon now, and there we go. Like, we're done, ta-da. So I guess if I could change the messaging, I think the thing that people are missing from this is that it's not just a 2024 mission. It is 2 phases. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2, and the phase 2 is specifically for sustainability. That is the goal, the overarching goal of all of this, that I do think got very muffled in all the noise, is that we are looking to figure out how to make a moon base, and that involves the science, which is going to happen a lot in phase 1, of taking regolith, taking samples, seeing how humans do all those different things. That's going to happen a lot, so that we can figure out in phase 2 how we can start building that moon base, how we can have that sustainable presence on the moon and in space, which, yeah, I think that's a really exciting piece of all this that people are forgetting.
Yeah, and I well, okay, if it was safe and affordable, would you go to space?
Yes, even if it
uh,
wasn't, let's go. Just
Even
send
if
me
it
up. Yeah.
wasn't safe or wasn't affordable?
I'll take a loan out. Yeah, it'll be fine. I'll wear my safety vest. Whatever you can do to get me to space, I'll do it.
Well, have you heard of Space Hero?
Is that the new reality show coming out?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm familiar. I got to figure out how to get a spot on that show.
So I'm part of the Space Insiders Insiders program, Space Hero
Mhm.
Insiders program, and we had like our first orientation like this
Wow, that's
past
exciting.
weekend. So
Yeah.
this coming year is going to be exciting
Yeah.
if everything goes to plan. So
Yeah, that's that show coming out. Well, once again, it made people, just the announcement alone made people realize that space is still a thing. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, "Oh wow, not only is the space a thing, but I could go." And that's so cool.
I
I
know
love that show.
I've never actually had it happen, but I do feel like there's sort of a turn in people's perception whenever you're like talking about astronauts on the moon or in space and what have you. It's like, how's that benefit me? Why do that? Da,
Hmm.
da. Well, would you like to go? Oh, yes, that makes sense. Let's do that one.
That one, yes, I can
Yeah,
talk about that.
exactly. Well,
Yep.
I know, I imagine you're at work just looking at your background.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to keep you too long, but is there anything that you want to discuss that we didn't get to?
Hmm. Let's see here. I think one thing that I do like to talk about is how you can get involved here on Earth in space. Like, you know what I mean? It's a very, weirdly enough, it's a very accessible industry. Um, like I always say, the people I've met involved in the space industry are the most down to earth people I've ever met. Like, they are excited to help you, they're excited to learn, and they're very much big picture thinkers of how do we get humanity to the next step. So that means if you're sitting there thinking, how do I get into the space industry, you literally just email someone or you call them or you meet them at a conference post COVID because they're just excited to help you out. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I love about the industry. And then with that, it's not just engineers like me. You know what I mean? I think there's a stigma around the, it's not rocket science, meaning rocket science is really hard, which it is, but it's not like unattainable. And the reason it would be really hard for one person, but we're not doing this as one person. We're doing this as, an entire industry. So, and it's not just rocket scientists, it's science communicators, it's teachers, it's, the business developers who are getting people to buy into this because it's so much bigger than just the engineers. One example that I like to talk about is I did an analog mission earlier this year at High Seas. And so I was in a simulated moon base, we lived there for 2 weeks, all that kind of stuff. And I realized you don't have to want to be an astronaut to do that. You could just be someone that's looking for self-growth and you can figure out how the human factors play into space. Or you could be maybe a botanist or something like that that's interested in plant development. You don't have to be this huge space nerd like me and like so many others. You can just be a person who wants to go try that out. And that's the same thing for your career too. Like if you want to get in space, it's easy to do. You just have to want it, like you just have to go do it.
When were you at High Seas?
September. I was there from September 7th through the 21st. And we were the first crew since COVID happened. So we had a lot of the kind of figuring out how to deal with like COVID in Hawaii and quarantine and that kind of stuff. So that was really interesting. It was probably the most honest quarantine experience you can have because you're literally living in a room with like 5 other people and that's it. You don't get to go outside. You don't get you don't meet other people. So it's a really good like COVID to space comparison.
Yeah, we had a speaker, Elliot Roth. I think he may have been
He was on my crew.
He was on your crew. Okay, because I knew you went that time.
I know him quite well. Yeah, we're good friends.
Did you eat some of his algae?
I did. It was delicious, actually. Well, I guess it wasn't delicious. It didn't necessarily taste like anything, but I'm a texture eater and I found it very weird that I actually really like the texture of algae. It might've just been because I had eaten dehydrated food for 2 weeks. So the algae was nice and different, but it was actually, I was like, oh yeah, this guy's onto something. Algae is the way to go.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, you grow it in like a little small bioreactor and,
it's all right there. Yeah.
And yeah, it's like fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to meet you and actually talk to somebody that's actually making it happen. So I thank you for the work you do.
Of course. Yeah, that's the goal, 2024, that's the goal.
Awesome. Well, you have a good rest of your day then.
You too. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.